showing no link between vaccines and autism. This was something that multiple senators pressed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on, most notably Senator Bill Cassidy, who is a physician and is the chair of the Senate Health Committee, which hosted the second day's confirmation hearing. Here's an example of one exchange between those two on this topic.
If you are approved to this decision, to this position, will you say unequivocally, will you reassure mothers unequivocally and without qualification that the measles and hepatitis B vaccines do not cause autism?
Senator, I am not going into the agency with any.
Well, that's kind of a yes or no question, because because the data is there, and that's kind of a yes or no. And I don't mean to cut you off, but that really is a yes or no.
If the data is there, I will absolutely do that.
Now there is the data. Just because I used to do hepatitis B, as I've said, I know the data is there.
Well, then I will be the first person. If you show me data, I will be the first person to assure the American people that they need to take those vaccines.
Now, what concerns me is that you've cast doubt on some of these vaccines recently. I mean, like the last few years, but the data, and I can quote some of it, the data has been there for a long time.
So Cassidy really pleading there with Kennedy to say not that he's going to go in with no preconceived notions, but in fact to accept that the science is already established on this point. There was another topic that Republicans in particular were looking for assurances on from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and that was abortion. Of course, during his own presidential campaign, Kennedy expressed a belief that women should have more access to abortion than Trump and many Republicans believe they should have. And Kennedy did provide assurances to those Republicans in these hearings that he would implement whatever policies President Trump wants to put in place on abortion. But that also led to Democratic senators calling him out on his previous stances. Take a look.
Mr. Kennedy, I'm confused. You have clearly stated in the past that bodily autonomy is one of your core values. The question is, do you stand for that value or not? When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy, that we can't be a moral authority in this country.
Right, but that isn't what you said back in New Hampshire.
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
And finally, a major point really just stemmed around Kennedy's apparent grasp of the concepts and the agencies that he would be overseeing as health secretary. Several senators from both sides of the aisle quizzed him on differences between Medicare and Medicaid and asked him for specific policy ideas along those lines. And it seemed like many senators were left feeling like he didn't have enough of a grasp on those concepts. But really, a lot of eyes now are on Senator Bill Cassidy, because in addition to serving as the chair of the Health Committee, he also serves on the Senate Finance Committee. And that is the committee that's going to take the initial vote on whether to advance Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s nomination. We heard from Cassidy at the end of the health hearing that he was really struggling with how to vote because of the issues around vaccines. And he said that Kennedy might be hearing from him over the weekend.
All right, Meg Terrell, thank you so much. All right, for more now, we're joined by Lindsay McPherson, a congressional reporter at the Washington Times who attended RFK Jr.'s hearings. Lindsay, great to see you. Okay, as we just saw a sample of that, RFK Jr. grilled by Democrats and Republicans who tried to establish that he's not qualified, that he lacks basic knowledge of some distinctions like the differences between Medicare and Medicaid, for example. Will all of that cripple his chances?
It is certainly holding him back at this moment. I think it's too soon to say it will cripple it. Certainly among Democrats, I think it's going to be hard for him to find any support among Democrats, particularly on the Finance Committee. Ron Wyden, who is the top Democrat on the Finance Committee, has already said that he doesn't expect any Democratic votes for him on that panel. So that does go back to the point where Bill Cassidy, a Republican on that panel and the chair of the Health Committee that had the other hearing, his vote is very important in terms of advancing him to the floor. And then on the floor, then there are some several other Republicans to watch if he makes it that far, as well as some Democrats who may or may not vote for him, but it's more likely to be a party line vote.
Some of the sharpest attacks, as we saw, came from Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, the chair of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. He's also a physician. The senator, has remained steadfastly loyal to Trump, but says he's struggling with, this nomination and, might have to have a conversation with Kennedy throughout the weekend. Do you think, Cassidy's loyalties to Trump will outweigh his, clear concerns that he has about RFK Jr.?
No, I don't think for Cassidy, Trump loyalty is a factor here really at all. He is up for re-election this year, so that is something to be considered. And the idea that if he were to oppose Trump, that, that would have some political ramifications potentially. But I think for him, it really is, as he made clear in those exchanges about the medical science and whether, and he made this clear in his closing argument at the last hearing, was that he wants to make sure that the megaphone that RFK already has as a public figure, somebody who ran for president, is well known, has a big following, but would have even bigger following in this role if confirmed, that he's going to use that, and advance science that's been proven. And particularly, you saw the exchanges about autism. I think it was very frustrating for Senator Cassidy and others that he hasn't looked into these long-held studies and that he hasn't accepted the science and that he still needs to be shown data and he hasn't done the research. So is there an opening? Yes, I think he's provided an opening for him to come out more clearly about this. And I could see in the form of whether it's a public press conference, a letter, or something, that there might be something Kennedy would have to put out to get Cassidy's vote. And I think there's an opening for that. But he is definitely, I think, struggling with this because of his profession as a doctor and the actual health ramifications.
We're still in the early hours of understanding what this means, but I think this may end up being a very big deal. Today, the Post broke news that the highest-ranking career official at Treasury, a man named David Liebrick, is leaving the U.S. government, quote, after a clash with allies of billionaire Elon Musk over access to sensitive payment systems. So Elon Musk and his team of people have reportedly been asking Treasury for access to the payment systems that the government uses to pay its bills, to pay out trillions of dollars a year across the federal government. Also payments to businesses and individual households. So if you're a federal worker, before your paycheck hits your bank account, it goes through this system. Same thing if you get a Social Security check or a Medicare benefit. Payments to government contractors, tax refunds, grant recipients. You get the idea. This is basically the government's checkbook at the Treasury Department, how they pay for everything. It's so sensitive that only a few career officials actually have access to use this system. But according to the Post today, Elon Musk and his team have demanded access to it as well, which led to a dispute with a very high-ranking career official at Treasury who's now quit over this dispute, who's now resigned. The Post says it is unclear what exactly Elon Musk's team wanted to do, why they wanted access to this incredibly sensitive system. One former Treasury Department official tells the Post, quote, this payment system has never been used in a way to execute a partisan agenda. You have to really put bad intentions in place for that to be the case. I do not know enough about what this payment system does or how it works to understand the implication of it potentially being misused. But I will tell you, I have been watching enough of these red flags in the last 11 days to recognize that this is a very big one. And if the people in control of this very sensitive, very highly restricted system now do have bad intentions for what they're going to do with it, what does that mean? What is the scope of what they could do? Joining us now is Washington Post senior White House reporter Isaac Arnsdorf, who's one of the reporters who broke this story. He's also the author of Finish What We Started, the MAGA Movement's Ground War to End Democracy. Mr. Arnsdorf, thanks very much for being here. I know it's a really, really busy night. Let me start by asking you what kind of information, what kind of system this is, this payment system.
Well, what you said is exactly right, Rachel. This is the checkbook. This is how the government's bills get paid. And David Liebrick, as the most senior official in the Treasury Department, who was the acting Treasury Secretary until Trump's nominee was confirmed, is the expert at managing it, including managing the debt ceiling, which, as we know, is coming up really, really soon with the spending limit in danger of being breached. That is all, he's the expert on that. That's his expertise. All the payments to this is how the government pays its bills, and it's never been anything that has any political role. And Liebrich is a professional. He's worked there for many decades and through both administrations. And this isn't something that they're just making the payments that Congress authorized and that the government obligated.
And Isaac, I'll tell you, the reason I wanted to talk to you tonight, even though this is a very busy night and a lot's going on, is because I'm really spooked by the quote from the former Treasury official who says, seems to be really raising the alarms that somebody with bad intentions who wanted to use this payment system for partisan reasons could do something very...
And the real obstacle is political. No, one could argue that these Dutch films should step up, impose the moderation policies they think are right, political fallout be damned. Perhaps these companies could more forcefully report publications, claims of potentially motivated censorship and shadow beginning by pointing out that right-wing content still dominates the most popular every day on Facebook. But if even White House officials appear tentative about picking fight with the right-wing industrial complex, it's not surprising that tech films would follow suit, she later added. Rebel did not immediately respond to Fox Digital News request